So, the world of cartoon lifespans is a mixed bag. Some end on their own terms, the way the creators intended. Some end miserably, after an infamously bad ending. Some don't end, just waiting to be put out of their misery. Some get rebooted or reinvented. Some to cult success, others to glorious failure. And the most interesting to me is that some cartoons end abruptly before they are given a chance to truly shine with what they're capable of. It happens to so many cartoons. It's like when a young pet or child dies before they can see their fullest potential. A sad metaphor, but a true one. While certain cartoons end early for justifiable reasons, like being negatively received, some of the most creative, most interesting, most compelling cartoons end up on the chopping block before they could even end properly, with a satisfying ending. And as someone who appreciates the field of animation, seeing all this budget and talent go to waste is pitiful. It's pretty sad seeing so much effort from these talented creators going the wayside because of varying reasons, whether it be corporate interference, lack of merchandise, or being released at the wrong time. Whatever reason it may be would be enough to get the show cancelled to never see the light of day again. And to see this genuine effort go down the drain hurts not just my soul, but the souls of the creators who made these cult classic shows. Some of these cancelled shows sometimes keep their cult following after they ended, but some aren't lucky to have the same treatment. They're just left forgotten to time. And the latter describes the fandom of the show I am talking about today. I want to shed light on a particular cartoon that ended too soon. While some have talked about other ended too soon cartoons, such as the original Teen Titans or Symbiotic Titan, I want to cover a cartoon that hasn't been talked about much in recent memory, especially in comparison to other cartoons from the same company or other cancelled cult classics. Today, let's take a look at a certain Disney cartoon that only a select few have talked about on the website. Instead of talking about vehicles or killer robots, let's talk about vehicles that fight killer robots. That's right, this time we are looking at Disney's forgotten cartoon, Motorcity. Right off the bat, I'll admit, I never grew up with this show. 11 years ago, I was into 3 things related to weaponized cars: Speed Racer 2008, Hot Wheels Battle Force 5, and Cars 2. Especially the first two, as both entertained me with their fast-paced action scenes and awesome, gadget-filled cars. I never watched Motor City when it came out 11 years ago in 2012, but I knew of its existence. I was aware of the show on the Disney Wiki, plus seeing its name on the cable box schedules. Remember when those were a thing? But I never saw it because it would always air in the Philippines at 3 in the morning. However, recently, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Because of the hiatus the Owl House had between seasons 2 and 3, I wanted to watch another Disney cartoon that was similar to it. Then after some research and digging on the Disney Wiki, I came across Motor City for the first time in 10 years, and became my biggest hyperfixation for a while. And I became hooked. I drew fan art and did plenty of customs. It was an amazing experience for me. To me, Motor City is one of the best cartoons Disney has under its belt, up there with fan favorites such as The Owl House and Gravity Falls. It could have been Disney's answer to Avatar: The Last Airbender or Ben 10 in the anime-inspired cartoon scene, had it not been for unfortunate circumstances. Said unfortunate circumstances, I'll explain later at the end of this video. With that being said, let's deep dive into Motor City, the greatest show that Disney wants you to forget. But before we get into that, let's go over a lesser known thing about Motor City, the show's history. Motor City was the brainchild of Chris Prynoski, creator of MTV's Downtown and later producer of Cartoon Network's Megas XLR. He created a pitch back in 2000 prior to working on Megas called Motor City, named after the nickname given to the famous American city of Detroit, the American metropolis responsible for the innovators of the automobile, such as Ford. This pitch was about a new Detroit built over the original Detroit and the rebels who fought against the new Detroit's army of robots. This pilot featured a skinny race car driver and a slight green muscle car as he fought for freedom in the underground of Motor City. The driver in this pilot would eventually become the basis for Mike Chilton, whose last name was taken from an auto repair manual company. His design would later be refined as the MTV era of the show moved forward. Mike's redesign brought along several main characters that would eventually become the Burners. Chuck, Dutch, then named Love after the Chevrolet pickup truck, Julie, and Texas. Alongside would be a scrap member of the Burners named Holly. Prynoski pitched Motor City to MTV executives, though it was passed after the studio canceled his previous show Downtown. Prynoski moved on to Megas XLR, leading his pet project to fall to the wayside for years, for his attempt to pitch it to Adult Swim was sadly rejected. That was until Disney saw interest in the show in 2009 for unknown reasons. But given the time frame the show got picked up, my leading theory is because of Disney's recent success with Pixar's Cars and Disney TVA's Phineas and Ferb in the boys market. Disney execs likely wanted to target older kids and teenagers who were getting old of both franchises for their then in development channel Disney XD. Being the second Disney XD exclusive after Kick Buttowski, Motor City would hopefully set eyes on the new tween to teen aimed channel. Even though the show wouldn't get any toys, it's likely Disney picked Motor City for eventual toy sales in the case the show did well. Because, you know, cars. With that said, another pilot was made around 2009. Footage of it does exist like the previous pilot, albeit in very, very low quality. More elements, like the art style, car, and character designs of the final show began to appear, including the introduction of the main villain, Abraham Cain, his idiotic henchman Thule, and the Burners' mentor Jacob, a character who is based on Chris Prynoski's friend, Scott Brutus Renacker, otherwise named Goat, a friend who was referenced in both Megas XLR and Downtown. According to a Tumblr post by the official Motor City Tumblr account, People of Motor City, the final show was influenced by the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion and the anime movie Redline, the latter of which is an animated movie featuring futuristic racing cars. Artist Brandon Seller and Robert Valley, the latter being the Gorilla's character designer, would join the team as the vehicle and character designers respectively. George Christic and Craig Lewis would join as head writers, with Chris Prynoski and Juno Lee on directing duty. After that pilot, Disney greenlit over 20 episodes, with the first episode being released to the world on April 30th, 2012. And from there, viewers would be greeted into the urban cyberpunk wasteland of Motor City, Michigan, and its fellow characters. After watching all 20 episodes in preparation for this video, I see that Motor City is an action cartoon about a group of race car wielding rebels called the Burners, and their many escapades trying to take down the villain of the week, mostly Abraham Cain and his army of killer drones. After building a new city called Detroit Deluxe over the old Detroit, now dubbed Motor City, Cain banned personal freedoms such as automobiles and free will. This causes the Burners to fight for freedom against Cain, his affiliates, or other villains. The Burners consist of the courageous leader, Mike Chilton, the passionate double agent, Julie Cain, the cowardly tech expert, Chuck, the eccentric mechanic, Dutch Gordy, and the comedic muscle, Texas. Starting with Mike Chilton, he is the head honcho of the Burners. Equipped with his staff and his modified muscle car, Mutt, courageous and daring is how I would describe him. He faces danger without a smiley face, but Mike is willing to be protective of his friends even when he sometimes thinks of himself and not others. Mike learns this as early as episode 1, and his character development moves on from there, as he learns to become more trusting of his teammates moving forward, especially towards the end of the show. Mike, despite being a courageous leader, has insecurities rooted in his troubled past. Mike used to work for Abraham Cain until he defected, upon realizing the dangers of his actions upon the innocents. He realized that those in power, like Cain, are corrupt and could be capable of manipulating him, which is proven correctly by other villains in the series, who share a similar theme to the Cain family. And speaking of the Cain family, Julie Kapolsky Cain is the double agent of the team and the daughter of Abraham Cain. Julie is capable of relaying information from the enemy territory within her police interceptor 9 lives. Unlike Mike, she is willing to care about others more often in spite of her controlling father. She cares greatly for the Burners, and especially for her best friend Claire, a peppy girl who acts as a glimmer of light in Deluxe amidst all of the oppression the citizens of Motor City face from Kane's forces. We also have Chuck, Mike's best friend and the brains of the Burners. Despite all of this, he's very cowardly and especially is shown not to know how to drive, as evident in the standout episode Blonde Thunder. I'll discuss more on him when we get to the writing section, but I find Chuck to be pretty relatable, for despite his weaknesses and his cowardice and fear, he is capable of solving the situation at hand. He is one of my favorite characters in Motor City for this reason. While Mike Chilton is who I would be ideally, a righteous leader, Chuck is who I really am, a nerdy introvert. Speaking of favorites, Dutch Gordy is another favorite protagonist, the pilot of Whiptail and the creative soul of the Burners. Just like Mike, he used to live in Deluxe, but left to pursue his interest in art, which his family disapproved of. He's a passionate dude who can get out of any situation using his skills and planning to use. He loves being in the team, as it allows for him to freely pursue his talents within engineering and spray painting, alongside his pet robot Rot. He occasionally has a good idea here and there, but is overall a creative soul at heart who when needed can save his friends in time. As an artist myself, he relates to me not just because he is one, but rather his willingness to help his friends using his creative skills, as evident in the starring episode Going Dutch. And finally, we have Texas, the dumb muscle of the team and the driver of Stronghorn. Despite his occasional idiocy, he proves to be a viable asset in his strength and martial arts skills. He has the best intentions, but he isn't the brightest one. He ain't the sharpest tool in the shed, but when his bad ideas cause consequences, Texas is rightfully called out for it. I'll admit, I didn't like him in the show at first, but he started to grow on me on my second rewatch. All of these characters play off against each other in a natural way, and it's all held together by the voice performances, which leads to witty banter between each member. These characters feel like a found family, a group of nobodies who became somebodies through hanging out and kindling joy through shared interests. All 5 are mentored by the elderly mechanic and chef, Jacob. He is an old beatnik, yes, but he has a caring attitude towards these young strangers who happen to be his friends. The villains are also interesting in their personalities and or motives. Abraham Cain is the CEO of Cain Co., Julie's father and the founder of Detroit Deluxe. A ruthless tyrant who won't let anyone get in his way. He started as Jacob's partner in a Detroit garage building utility robots, but turned on him after becoming corrupt with power. Cain might seem like your token evil CEO at first, but the show makes him interesting by showing the extent of his power over the people. Not amazing, mind you, but interesting. Interesting in the fact that they don't shy away from showing how much he is in power. From his imposing demeanor towards employees, to sending ruthless and mindless killing machines after our heroes, Cain is truly a force to be reckoned with. Especially in the season finale, when he has the chance to destroy Motor City with the Genesis pod to eliminate all of its structures, but is later stopped by the Burners in time. His sidekick Thule is a very oblivious but loyal sidekick to Cain, a foil to Cain's obsessive and tyrannical dictator persona. Thule also seems to be a comic relief character cliche at first, but just like Texas, his stupid and goofy persona manages to be charming. In this case, it's because Thule plays off Cain's strict attitude. Though sometimes, Thule is willing to take action and initiative, even if his ideas aren't necessarily the brightest. There are a few other villains making up the main cast. For example, the Duke of Detroit is a rich, eccentric, and bossy guy who owns a gigantic mansion and a ton of limousines while in control of parts territories on Motor City ground. He's such a Chad, hands down, for his sleazy and cheesy personality coupled with his love for cars in general. While this might come across as just simping for his cars, It shows his over-the-top personality and his rock-inspired presentation. A guy who cares for himself and loves his life doing the things he does. He poses an imposing threat on the burners through his over-the-top attitude and behavior. However, his character takes a turn for the better, and I will explain that when we get to the writing. The eco-terrorist, Kaya of the Terra Tribe, is a more minor villain compared to the Duke of Detroit, appearing in only 2 episodes out of the 20. But she provides a menacing presence in any episode she's in, with implications for this world. Having been heavily mutated due to radioactive waste dumped by Kane, she shows a middle ground between the burners and Kane's forces. A middle ground that's an enemy to both sides, with the burners fending her off as her methods for destroying Kane are unethical, not to mention causing endangerment of the innocents. But the best side villain for me is Red, a mysterious masked driver. Think Racer X from Speed Racer, but evil. Red is the personal enemy of Mike Chilton, for when Mike used to work for Kane Co., his demolition crew destroyed Red's home in spite of Mike realizing his wrongdoings. He's ruthless and without sympathy, even going as far as to teaming up with Kane, with Red obtaining a new car and suit from him. Unfortunately, in spite of his imposing presence, we never find out who he is under the mask, and is what I assume was a plot point for Season 2. Despite showing up in 3 episodes out of 20, the time he is given in the show makes his presence earned. Like, whenever he is a threat, oh boy, he is a threat. The side characters are also interesting. Despite having little to no backstory, characters like the rude bully street tuner driver Junior, the swift IndyCar racer Foxy, the calm cabler mechanic Tenny, or even the aforementioned peppy Deluxian Claire, all are standout characters with their unique personalities and natural interactions with the burners. All of Motor City's characters are interesting, not because all of them have a backstory, as Sam only have that, but rather because they're interesting through the genuine interactions between each character. It helps their personalities stand out and helps this world feel more alive. The ones that are given backstories, like Mike, Red, Dutch, Kaya, and Julie, are interesting and compelling. Not 100% perfect by any means, but they and their personalities and backstories are written tightly. However, those like Chuck, Texas, Kane, or the Duke have little to no background information. Kane has some background information, for instance, as evident in the episode Ride of the Fantasy Vans, where his history with Jacob is shown, but it's not made clear in the episode as to why Kane banned automobiles or why he chose to build Deluxe over Detroit instead of, I don't know, the middle of nowhere. While a valid criticism, I can't excuse this as I assume this was to be expanded in Season 2. Despite me praising this show as one of Disney's best and one of my favorite cartoons, it's not without fault for its short run. And it's sad because I find Chuck, Tex, and the Dude to be written well in spite of lacking an in-depth backstory. In short, there is so much to the character personalities and interactions that these writers invested their time in within an overwhelmingly short amount of time. Yet at the same time, however, it leaves a lot to be desired as a few character backstories are lacking due to the lack of more episodes. Even within a short amount of time, these characters, especially the main protagonists, are solidly developed in their characters within the given time frame. And it all comes down to the writing of the episodes and their themes, especially with how they develop these protagonists through morals. For our cartoon that gained popularity on its radical art style, Motor City isn't a style over substance show. While not perfect, the writers put in a lot of effort into the stories in spite of limited number of episodes. For it has engaging episode storylines coupled with witty banter and great morals. If you've seen my previous 2 cartoon reviews, then you must know that I love morals in these cartoon shows. While there isn't much of an ongoing story arc compared with something like Avatar: The Last Airbender or even Disney's Tron Uprising, where each episode continues on an ongoing story with cliffhangers in each episode. It's more akin to Gravity Falls Season 1. A very episodic first season with a heavy emphasis on plot continuity and character development, culminating into an intense 2-part finale. Each episode has an episodic villain of the week concept, but there's a sense of progression with the story and characters. Like, when new characters are introduced, most of them become mainstays in the series, such as the Duke, Red, Foxy, Junior, or Tenny, just to name a few. So when villains like Kaya, Red, or the Duke meet the Burners again, they recognize them as an earlier threat, now with a new plan or upgrades in Red's case. Character developments and most plot threads are remembered between episodes when put into the right order of events, for reasons that I'll get into much later. For example, the Burners save cars from an abandoned facility in the episode Like Father Like Daughter, to give them to the poor motor citizens who need cars to survive. The next time we see them is in the episode Robot Roundup, in the episode's titular tournament, showing how they're being put to use now on a regular basis. Small details like that show how much the writers cared about continuity to maintain a continuous story. The show and its characters are tightly written with little error. Said errors I'll discuss very soon. The writing for the characters themselves is pretty good. Not like Tolkien level writing, but it's still pretty good. The characters play off against each other in either casual, comedic, or dramatic ways. When it's a funny scene, it's funny. And when it's an intense scene, good golly is it intense. The voice performances help too, especially in setting the mood of the scene. And with that said, not every joke lands, but without showing footage because of copyright reasons. Trust me, there are some line deliveries that prove to be hilarious just because of the way they're said, or because of the interaction itself. Either those two, or the joke just comes out of nowhere, which makes it funnier for me. The stories of Motor City consist of the Burners having to face the villain or the situation of the week, which, while this might seem repetitive from the way I described it, the way each episode's executed is way different. From having different plot devices and concepts to unique and inner-outer conflicts per episode, whether it be Kane controlling Julie through his safety suit, the Duke getting the Burners the holotoxic way for his stupid TV show, or Tekla teaming up with Kaya for his lack of self-worth, each episode is far from formulaic. Each episode has a good moral that furthers the character development of the main protagonist of each episode. Whether it be realizing your talents can be useful, or knowing lying about your reputation won't make you feel better, the episodes have a good moral to them that also helps the protagonist of the episode. My favorite episode has to be Fearless, an episode about Chuck proving his friends wrong that he's a scaredy cat by using a Kaneco booster ring to eliminate his cowardice, ultimately leading to chaos. This episode highlights how much of a coward Chuck is, and it's understandable due to the high stakes of the situations he's given at hand. Yet, Chuck is willing to prove his friends wrong, despite knowing it would lead to severe chaos. He ends up becoming a total prick because of his drive to become somebody he isn't. In the end, Chuck accepts his fears and realizes it's okay to be scared. We want to be somebody else, but we lose ourselves to our desires to make ourselves quote-unquote better. But alas, we have to live with who we are as people. This episode is a great example as to why Chuck is my favorite character in the show. A charming yet relatable character indeed. Another favorite episode that has a relatable moral is the episode Blonde Thunder, another Chuck episode. This is an episode where Chuck reveals that he cannot drive, so Mike trains him so that he can win a bet against the Duke of Detroit. Mike purposefully enters Chuck in for his own well-being without considering Chuck's fears. In the end, Mike learns not to put others out of their own comfort zone, and Chuck realizes his place in the team as a programmer is as important as being a driver. On to non-Chuck examples right now. The episode Going Dutch is a good character study for the titular character, well, Dutch, as it's revealed that he loves doing art, but most episodes is too preoccupied with fighting before he could even do anything. And when he's left alone, a nanotech zombie apocalypse happens, using his creativity to his advantage and learning that he can use his skills in danger too. For one more non-Chuck episode, in the episode Texasify It, Texas wants to feel like his ideas are being put to good use. So he teams up with the eco-terrorist Kaya in hopes of finding self-worth in himself. However, his ideas have serious consequences, such as almost getting the Terra to achieving their goal of destroying the Deluxe and attacking its innocent bystanders. In spite of causing trouble, Texas ends up using his karate skills, once deemed pointless by his teammates, to save the day. Sometimes, your ideas can find a good place at the right time. This leads to my next point on this show's writing. The show's themes. Motorcity is ultimately a show about family. Whether it be found family or a blood family, the burners themselves treat each other as a found family for their shared interests and goal. As Mike distrusts the found family of Kanekoa and its empire, Julie distrusts the blood family that her corrupt father entails but trusts Mike's team, showcasing that sometimes a caring found family is better than a corrupt blood family. Another prominent theme is power and leadership. The burners show leadership and power over them using their freedom for the greater good to libertize Motor City. Kane shows power through his dictatorial corruption over the city of Deluxe. Red shows power by gaining it through another individual, that being Kane, to extract vengeance over another. Kaya shows power through her need to get rid of Deluxe, but forces it over the innocents instead of just Kane for her own vendetta against the tyrant. The Duke shows leadership and power, for he owns a giant monopoly over parts in Motor City, and despite being free in that city, among others, he uses his power to manipulate and blame others. The last part comes to a close in the two-part finale, Vega and the Better Tomorrow, where Duke manipulates the burners to get rid of their cars because of Kane's orders. However, the Duke realizes his mistakes and that he and his affiliates decide to fight against Kane with Chilton and his team. Remember that what I said, that Mike believes that power makes people corrupt and that people in power shouldn't be trusted? Well, he's proven wrong in the finale as the Duke saves him from falling to his death. This completes character arc from manipulative to hero, but unfortunately, that's where the show ends. While Motor City has great writing and themes, it's not perfect. Remember that I emphasized most of the plot threads being remembered and that part about little errors? Yeah, some of them are forgotten about, assuming Season 2 was supposed to elaborate on them. A few plot threads go unused due to the show getting cancelled. I understand why, but these loose threads are still count as criticism for preventing the show from becoming truly great. One loose thread in the show that never had an answer to was Dr. Hudson. No, not that one! So this guy was supposed to be helping Jacob and Kane back in Deluxe's founding, with him creating this power core to destroy Motor City later on in his life in the episode Power Trip. He seemed to be a mainstay by the end, or at least that was implied, but except for a fantasy sequence in the episode Threat Level Texas, he seems to be nowhere in any other episode. What happened to him? He could have helped Jacob in a few episodes after this, plus maybe serving as another mentor figure. Though maybe the last part's why he never appeared again, because he might have just served as another Jacob. There are several others that are still as important. More loose threads that still bother me are what happened to Kaya after Mayhem Night? Who is Red under the mask? Why did Kane build Deluxe? Why did Kane ban freedom in cars? When will Chuck learn to properly drive? And most importantly of all, what exactly lies beyond Motor City? The last one's of great interest because the whole show is set in Detroit, but we don't know what happened to the rest of the United States, let alone the entire world. According to the episode Vega, Kane said everything beyond Deluxe is a wasteland. But why? Was there a World War III happening during this show? And after the end scenario, Fallout style? Who even knows? In general, the writing is pretty good. Not a 10 out of 10 Shakespearean masterpiece, but it's more than solid. It's sturdy and strong as a foundation of both Detroits. Outside of a few loose threads, the show takes advantage of its short episode count by having each episode be about characters or world building set pieces. And speaking of world building set pieces, unlike a certain other Disney-owned automobile-centric property, Motor City's world is actually unique from our own in terms of vibe and aesthetic. Remember what I said about liking Speed Racer and Hot Wheels Battle Force 5? Well, I enjoyed the futuristic city environments aspect of the former and the sci-fi world building of the latter. Thus, Motor City is like if you combine these two elements and put a grungy cyberpunk filter over everything. And speaking of remembering things, do you recall what I said about this being inspired by Evangelion? Well, that anime's underground city of Tokyo 3 might have inspired Motor City and Deluxe, albeit the Disney show does it with its own take and style on the concept of a city on top of an hidden metropolis. The city of Motor City is pretty in-depth. A giant city covered by another giant city is a cool idea on its own, but the art direction and design help the metropolis sell it. The art design of Motor City is amazing. It's this dark and dingy wasteland full of high-tech roads and cables, with each surface decked out in graffiti and decay. These buildings show the remains of what used to be Detroit. It's now a desolate and lawless safe haven for the poor, but one that remains hopeful for the future as the burners save the day in each episode. Colored in with greens and dark blues, Motor City feels like a derelict yet life-filled city. In contrast, the landscape of Detroit Deluxe is more clean and sanitized, rounded out and pearl white, complemented by grays and baby blues, overrun by silver robot grunts and drones that all share similar but different designs. The more geometric and smoother the designs coupled with the pale blue skies gives a sense of boredom in an intentional way, in contrast to the dark yet colorful underbelly of Motor City. All the machinery from the mechs to the vehicles are designed thoroughly with the setting of their respective origin in mind. All the machines and robots belonging to Deluxe are grayish and white homogeneous bricks, matching the sterile white setting of the artificial city. The grunt bots maintain an imposing presence on our heroes with their aggressive yet corporate designs, a symbol of how controlling Kane is over the freedom of the city. Meanwhile, all of the machines, especially the vehicles belonging to Motor City, are varied in comparison, from muscle cars to sports cars to trucks to limousines to street tuners to RVs to racing cars. Each car suits each character perfectly and showcases the underground's haven's freedom regardless of their faction, with varying designs to fit the personalities of each character, and all of this brought to life by the animation. Oh my goodness, the animation! Motor City's animation is unlike any cartoon to come out of the Disney television animation family, in both the past and even the present. It might as well be one of the best animated and most aesthetically pleasing cartoons, if not the best to come out of this corporation. Even though I find The Owl House and Gravity Falls to be great cartoons, it's undeniable that they are weaker than Motor City on an animation and technical level. Sure, The Owl House has a ton of well-animated action scenes every now and again, but Motor City is like if these types of scenes were in every single episode. Motor City feels ahead of its time in many ways, as compared to similar automotive-focused cartoons, such as Hot Wheels Acceleracers or Hot Wheels Battle Force 5. Its visuals don't look dated at all. It feels very distinctly modern. Its animation outdoes most Disney cartoons released before and after Motor City's release. Being animated in America by animation powerhouse Titmouse Incorporated instead of overseas, the team clearly had the unique artistic style in mind to help set the show apart from its peers. The only two Disney cartoons that share Motor City's artistic presence are Tron Uprising and Marvel's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. What these two shows and Motor City have in common with each other are witty humor, charming characters, excellent character designs, intriguing stories, and most importantly of all, outstanding stylized animation. And speaking of character designs, all of them come across as unique. No character has the same silhouette, even characters that have the same body type. Each character has a unique head shape and color palette, being tall and stylized like a modern indie project. The constant use of hard edges provided by Guerrilla's character designer, Robert Valley, it helps Motor City stand out from other cartoons being produced by Disney at the time. Or even, recently, like I said before. Like, no offense to something like Amphibia or the Owl House, who all have creative character designs baked into their simple and rounded shapes. But Motor City takes things a step further by incorporating angular shapes and designs with creative caricature-esque faces. The animation is all done in Adobe Flash, a software infamous for some not-so-beloved cartoons. Titmouse had to essentially jerry-rig new technology for the sake of this show. The company created the Facinator plugin, which treats 2D characters like 3D rigs. This allows things like heads and torsos to spin organically in a 2D space without looking off-model as a flat image. The fact this was all done in Adobe Flash is commendable and proves that the programs used in trash such as Pixel Pinky and Johnny Test can create such impressive artistic achievement. If you told me the animation was traditionally animated, I would 100% believe you, because that's what I certainly thought so back then. But the fact it's all animated in Flash without feeling or being janky or stilted is certainly an amazing feat. Speaking of stilted and janky, the animation feels less janky and stilted than some of the traditionally animated Disney cartoons being released nowadays, which, not to throw shade or anything, is kinda embarrassing. The action scenes are pretty fantastic. Remember what I said about it being inspired by Redline? Well, the action and driving scenes are pretty indicative of that. Each scene is so well animated and choreographed that I'm shocked that this isn't from a big budget animated movie like the Spider-Verse movies or Nimona. Each hit feels intense. Each fast racing scene is exhilarating. And it all comes down to great storyboarding and direction, plus combining it with CGI props. The CGI animation blends in well with the 2D animation greatly, a thing that some shows have a hard time pulling off. But Motor City does it pretty consistently, with each 3D visual looking on par with the stylized 2D drawings. From the behind the scenes videos, it must have been hard to pull such a feat, yet the folks at Titmouse did it justice. Like every other aspect of the show, it isn't perfect. Being in Adobe Flash, it does reuse similar character model angles often, in spite of it having more fluid animation than other Disney cartoons at the time. Though when you watch the show the second time, it's easier to notice when a character's face is at a certain angle. However, I'll give it some slack, as it's hard to notice when these characters are put into very complicated poses outside of the casual shots. Whenever I look at this show, I feel like so much love was put into this world and its characters. Also, whenever I look at this show, I start to wonder what the budget was, because if it weren't that high, then the budget was totally worth it, yet it was wasted by Disney. There definitely was a vision that wasn't compromised by executive meddling, and while the vision for the animation wasn't compromised, the show sadly was. And as a result, some of the writing and characters were due to the shortening. This isn't an issue with the show itself, yet again, but more so with Disney canceling the show too soon. Let's get into that now. In spite of all its shortcomings from the tight episode count, Motor City sounds like a great show from the things I've been saying so far. But then you might ask, if it's that good, then why did this show in particular end after one season? Many plot points from Red's identity to what lies beyond Motor City were pretty much cut short. A few characters like Texas and Chuck, while interesting in their interactions and personalities, have their backstories cut out from season 1. So, why do I think the show is cancelled then? I have 2 reasons. Number 1, it failed to maintain a general audience. Based on research from watching both the Motor City videos by Jordan Fringe and Draw Opinion Dump, plus research data from the Motor City Fandom Wiki and Wikipedia, I was able to conclude that Motor City wasn't given enough promotion. Sure, it had international dubs, a mobile game, a website, and a rally card X games, but that was it. Motor City aired on Disney XD, a channel that you had to pay extra for, and it wasn't included in cable packages by default. This was the biggest issue, as not only it decreased viewership and interest, but it tanked any hope Disney had for Motor City's success from day one. Sure, it had a large fanbase on Tumblr at the time that was given updates from the official Tumblr blog, but general audiences who didn't use that site wouldn't be aware of the show's existence. Had Motor City aired on Disney Channel alongside giants such as Phineas and Ferb or Gravity Falls, it could have been their next big TV franchise under the belt of IPs. Yet this show, and many other shows, would fall victim to the Disney XD curse. Another factor behind its lack of promotion was the strange lack of merchandise. This is incredibly strange due to the series being about cars, yet Disney owns a company whose biggest franchise in the toy aisles is about cars. Maybe they were waiting for the series to get good TV ratings before they could make toys, but I'm not so sure. Speaking of TV ratings, they were all over the place. According to the Draw Opinion dump video on Motor City, among other sources, there was a lack of proper reruns, making it hard for new viewers channel surfing to come across this show, with each episode airing in the early mornings or late nights. Not to mention the episodes sans the first few episodes and the last few episodes were played out of order for no particular reason, which in turn ruined the progression of character arcs throughout the series, and it made the show harder to watch for new audiences who had never seen Motor City before. Even worse, allegedly, the schedule was shuffled around so much that made it hard, if not downright impossible, to catch Motor City on a weekly basis. Another fiasco was that Disney accidentally leaked the second half of Season 1 on iTunes, of all places, leaking the episodes to fans who were supposed to wait a couple of months for the next half of Season 1. By the time this happened, the show likely got less viewership in Season 1B due to the small fandom of Motor City having seen the then and upcoming episodes. And if you're in the Amphibia or Owl House fandom, this wouldn't be the last time Disney would do this to their original cartoons. True colors for the future. On to number 2. It came out at the wrong time. Based on what general audiences were experiencing, an obvious factor in Motor City's premature cancellation in late 2012 was that the landscape of cartoons was clearly changing among general audiences. New, more comedic cartoons such as The Amazing World of Gumball or a regular show were coming in, with story-driven cartoons clearly on their way out. Shows like Green Lantern, Young Justice, Generator X, and Thundercats 2011 were given the boot. And while that was happening, the popular cartoon shows that did have an in-depth story had a very simplistic childish art style like Gravity Falls or Adventure Time, where the light-hearted stuff came first and the dark elements came second. And at Disney, big things were changing. So, you might have heard of this little-known movie franchise called, I don't know, Star Wars? Sarcasm aside, Disney bought out Lucasfilm, the owners of Star Wars, on October 30th, 2012. Disney announced a deal to acquire Lucasfilm for about $4.5 billion. By the time this deal happened, Motor City came back from a hiatus. But a few days later, on November 5th, 2012, Disney XD announced that it would not renew Motor City for a second season. Coincidence? I think not! To quote Rebel Taxi's video on why action cartoons are dead, a video that mentions Motor City and the Lucasfilm buyout, who needs a cartoon to chase the trend when you now own the trendsetter? Now that Disney owns Star Wars, they didn't need their own original attempts at sci-fi such as Motor City or the Tron franchise. Not to mention that Disney's Mars Needs Moms and John Carter, two recent sci-fi movies that were owned by Disney that recently flopped. So Disney likely saw new sci-fi projects as a total loss. If Motor City came out earlier before that buyout, maybe if it could have had lasted longer on television, it could have had a brighter future. But no, that opportunity was given to the Star Wars sequels instead, and that's sadly the timeline we live in. And now, you're probably wondering, what happened to Motor City after the show got cancelled? Well, it ain't pretty either. Motor City ended on January 6, 2013 with the episode A Better Tomorrow. At the end of the final episode, while Kane and Red flee from their biggest plan ever, the Burners and their rivals turned allies from the Duke of Detroit's side all celebrate their victory over the Genesis pod's destruction. With many previously mentioned loose threads still up there, the series forever remained incomplete before it even began a proper storyline within Season 2. It is like if Gravity Falls ended with Stan opening the portal at the end of Season 1, or if Amphibia ended at Sasha's arrival. Motor City ended prior to doing interesting things with its story. Motor City is undeniably a great cartoon, but at the same time, it's forever incomplete. Given another season or two, there could have been a story arc added to flesh out an ongoing story or saga. Motor City ended before it could give a proper finale to these amazing characters and this vast world. Not even on a cliffhanger, mind you. It just had the same status quo at the end, just with the Duke and his gang on Mike's side. And it's sad. However, the people of Motor City Tumblr site would give some extra information as to what Season 2 would have been like. Through a series of post-it notes and various other posts on Tumblr that are linked down below, here are the highlights of what we know about Season 2 of Motor City. Mike was supposed to have an older, long-lost sister named Capri Chilton, who lives in the wastelands beyond Deluxe. Chuck and Texas were supposed to have their backstories revealed, with Chuck being Mike's childhood friend who grew up in Deluxe with him, and Texas being born and raised in the depths of Motor City by intellectuals. Chuck was supposed to drive Blonde Thunder on a regular basis from now on, with it gaining its own logo. New villains would have been introduced, another plot point about showing what happened to Hudson, a season arc of Mike banding together the best of Motor City, a musical clip show episode from Dutch's perspective, Julie was supposed to be revealed to be an android for some reason, and more information on the Duke's backstory. The rest of the images are in the description through a Tumblr post by DHeart42, regenerated, among other things, if you want a rough idea of what Season 2 would have been like. Emphasis on a rough idea, because all Season 2 had were ideas, not scripts. All that got far were these random ideas and a rough draft of a brand new intro featuring a voiceover by Mike Chilton, with scratch audio done by Chris Prynoski. Sadly, that's all Season 2 has to offer. Remember, the team behind Motor City wasn't able to finish or make much progress on Season 2, as full production on Season 2 depended on good ratings from Season 1, which it obviously did not. After Motor City's cancellation, many of its staff moved on to other things, with several of the animation team working on both Turbo Fast and the Team Hot Wheels sequels. All of these utilize the same animation techniques found in Motor City, such as the complicated Flash animated characters and stylized CGI models, especially in the second example of Team Hot Wheels. However, Turbo Fast is of note because it has tons of references to Motor City, including a cameo by Jacob. The fact DreamWorks allowed references from their competitor's property is quite the feat, honestly. The people at Titmouse really wanted to bring Motor City back from the scrap heap, as evidenced by these two, and these projects, regardless of quality, are the closest the team has to bringing the show back from the dead. And let's just say that a few attempts have been made. A tweet allegedly posted on April 29, 2013 by crew member George Christic saying that Titmouse Inc. was having a meeting on bringing back both Motor City and Megas XLR. Obviously, 10 years later, this hasn't happened yet, as Motor City is still stuck in Vault Disney and Megas was filed as a tax loss. During MomoCon 2013, the Motor City wiki allegedly states that there was a discussion on both Motor City and Megas XLR being on Adult Swim's Toonami block, which obviously never happened to this day because Adult Swim is owned by a rival of Disney, that being Warner Brothers. Titmouse tried to secure the rights to Motor City back from Disney in hopes to bring the show back, but as of right now, nothing has been made public at all. People in Motor City tried to bring back the show through a Fight for Motor City movement on Tumblr and Twitter, but nothing came out of it. As of writing this video, Disney currently releases the entirety of Motor City on Apple TV and iTunes in the USA, and on Disney Plus Hotstar in Malaysia. The House of Mouse still owns Motor City to this very day, but they don't want anything to do with it. To this day, The least Disney could do is bring back Motor City to release on Disney Plus worldwide, like its sister show Tron Uprising. That could gauge interest and resurgence in the show's popularity, like what Avatar The Last Airbender did when it had the premiere on Netflix. While Motor City has a decently sized fandom, or at least used to back when it first came out, Motor City is mostly dead on the internet, and so I barely see people talk about it anymore in the general public. So maybe a spike of popularity could help revive the IP a tiny bit. Would I want to see Motor City come back? Absolutely, man! Will a revival happen like what Disney is doing eventually with Phineas and Ferb? No. I don't think Motor City is as important to Disney or as popular enough to gauge revival. But a worldwide Disney Plus release is possible. Unlike Cartoon Network and with Mega's XLR, I don't think Disney writes off failed cartoons as tax losses. They just don't anything to do with them. On a side note, Disney XD shows like Tron Uprising and Randy Cunningham are as forgotten as Motor City, yet all are on the streaming service. So I could see that happen if we're lucky. And with that said, that brings the end of this video. But no video is complete without a proper conclusion, unlike this show. In conclusion, Motor City is an amazing feat of a cartoon for Disney TVA. Despite being a personal favorite of mine, it's obviously not without faults, with the lack of more seasons and a conclusion leaving some parts to be desired. Then again, in hindsight, all the issues related to Motor City aren't the fault of the show itself, and more so Disney's lack of interest to continue the show. It's not Avatar The Last Airbender tier, given that show had an ending, but by combining engaging stories, fun characters, witty humor, and outstanding animation, Motor City is truly a work of well-meaning art that only could have been made by people absolutely passionate about this project. It's a great show with an understandable yet minor fault. It's so close to being perfect, yet without a proper ending, it just isn't. But as it is, Motor City is still a great show. It's the kind of show that Disney TVA needs more of. If it weren't for a few things occurring around Motor City's release, maybe it could have been the defining Disney cartoon of the 2010s, taking Gravity Falls' place in the spotlight. Though in this universe we live in, these 20 episodes are a glimpse into a world that we will never see. I commend Chris Prynoski and the team at Titmouse for creating such a one-of-a-kind experience. I also made this video for the many Motor City fans left in the world. While not as popular as back as 2012, there is still a small chunk of fans dedicated enough to the series on Tumblr. I dedicate this video to these people, and I wish them luck in any future endeavors that they have. While this video took way too much time to make, this video has been a big passion project of mine, given that just like Chuggington, many people haven't talked about this show enough except for the select few who are die-hard fans of it. Even though I didn't grow up with Motor City personally, the same way I did with Chuggington, I ended up deep into the Motor City rabbit hole last year because it piqued my interest. While there are two other popular videos on Motor City, I wanted mine to be more of an in-depth analysis of the show, to help make it stand out and to relay information that hasn't been said much in the space. Should I cover more cancelled cartoons? Or just more overlooked cartoons in general? Yes! Definitely. Absolutely. There are some out there that haven't been talked about much on this website that are interesting to discuss. But for now, I'll just leave you all with this video before I make another Thomas adjacent video again. I guess it's finally time to say goodnight to both Detroit Deluxe and Motor City for me to get some sleep after all this time. This has been Waxter. Like, comment, ring the bell, and subscribe. And most importantly of all, stay wacky! I know. I said Mighty Express would be on my next video in the All Engines Go review, while I also foreshadowed this Motor City review. But before covering that train wreck, let's talk about the last good thing related to talking vehicles that Keith Chapman created, which, ironically enough, is tied to something bad that he made. Something very infamous on the internet with a certain James A. Williams. Let's talk about the best thing of this bad thing he did, which is